The craziest part about this conversation, that if you are afraid, or if hood, ghetto, black people make you uncomfortable, that somehow makes you whitewashed, is that it insinuates that hood people themselves are not whitewashed, right? And let me explain to you what I mean. There's this documentary, and I'll put a video of it here. Now, it is based off of the book by this person, but it's by Thomas Sowell, okay? And he talks about the origins of black culture. Now, if you know me, you know how much I hate, capital H, that label of black, and how it's painted with such a wide brush to make it seem as if all black people need to think this way, feel this way, see things this way. We all need to be deathly afraid of, palm colored people, whatever you want to call it, right? We just don't think the same. We don't eat the same. We don't have the same attitudes. We don't worship the same. Like, all of this is literally a result of trying to colonize all of these different tribes and groups of people, and trying to put them in one place and say, because you have similar traits or characteristics physically, that means you belong to one another, right? Obviously, that's been one big dumpster fire of an experiment, but yet we have people that want to hold on to that so tightly. But anyways, I digress. Back to the point, right? So Thomas Sowell basically goes on to say that the origins of this quote unquote black culture that people associate with ghetto-ness and hood is literally white culture. White culture. Now, in Thomas Sowell's this documentary here, and also in his writings, what he goes on to argue is the fact, and attempts to prove, is the fact that these behaviors, these traits, is directly the result of the impoverished black Americans being raised or creating community around impoverished white Southern white Americans. Now, this particular group of white Americans, they were labeled as rednecks, they were labeled as crackers, and another labeling that they have has been trailer trash. You've probably heard this before. Again, all of these are, for the most part, derogatory terms, but for the most part, I have seen some white Americans embrace the idea of being called rednecks, not so much crackers, and not so much being called trailer park or trailer trash, or whatever it may be. Okay, you've also heard the term hillbillies, right? Now, what he goes on to do is research how far back their lifestyle goes, right? And it goes all the way back to their days in the British Isles, and they're worshiping their pagan gods and all of this stuff. So it even goes down to even the preaching style, the way that a lot of many black American preachers preach today, with that, that loud and that screaming, that all of this came from them mimicking the way that these white Southern Americans, they express themselves sexually, spiritually, etc. So I find it so ironic listening to people try to argue that you're whitewashed for not agreeing with a lifestyle that the very people who they're speaking on, that specific kind of people, they're whitewashed themselves because they're wearing an identity that's not even theirs. So acting as if to say that, if you don't agree with this and you don't follow this, you must be whitewashed, then again, you're insinuating as if this is the authentic version of you being, or you expressing yourself as a black labeled person, right? When the truth of the matter is, if you listed 30 different ways of living life, being life, expressing yourself, and all of these different things in front of you, and you were a blank canvas and you had to choose which one you want, 99% of you guys that try to identify as hood or ghetto or whatever it may be, you would not pick that up and let that be what you wear, right? Now, you may feel like you're so deeply ingrained into this way of living and this way of being that you cannot change your identity, or you cannot change your culture, which I want you to know that you can. But you might feel so loyal to the fact that this is the way my mama, my grandmama, my granddaddy, etc. There's a lot of ancestral type of connection to it. But what I want you to know, that even if this is the way that you ancestral, or you feel like you identify yourself, understand that just because it has been your culture for all of these generations does not make it authentic. So what you guys are arguing, it seems like to me, as if this is an authentic way of identifying as black. And I'm here to say, no, it's not. It was never authentic for your ancestors. So it sure as heck ain't gonna be authentic for me and the many of people like me. So, and this is where that part of that double-edged sword comes into place, is because what begins to happen is once the people that do get a grasp of that, okay, all of this culture here, all of these identities here, these were given to me, by slave masters, etc., colonialism, all of that stuff, then it began to say, okay, well, I'm going to go down the path of, African spirituality. And this is like 99% of the time what happens to people once they come to the understanding that the entire identity that they're wearing, it literally has been something that they've been mimicking, that their ancestors have been mimicking, that literally came from being around, these violent and these, super, wicked, unfortunately, this type of white American, right? So then they go down this spiritual path. Well, one, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't agree with that 100%. But however, I will say this, before you start trying to figure out a way to be black, figure out a way to be you. You know what I mean? Like, get in touch with your creator for real. Like, stop trying to think that there is religions that belong to skin colors, or there's religions that belong to regions of the earth. Like, at the end of the day, there is a creator that created every single one of us, and you are unique in your own specific way. So before you start trying to find another culture to copy, why don't you find out who the creator created you to be, and you create your culture from that place? That's authentic, if you ask me.